Hey everyone, welcome back. Now you guys remember in that last video where I showed you all that incredible stuff I brought back from the Canadian Reptile Expo? Well, one of them we actually have to set up. I didn't know it was coming, and that is that incredible isopod, Merulanella, and it's the species that they go in the trade by the name of DIABLO. It is such a highly coveted isopod, but I really am not prepared for it. So, I'm very thankful that Jeremiah actually sent them in a little bit of flake soil. Flake soil is probably, without question, one of the absolute best substrate components to use for isopods, millipedes, and so forth, because it's already got all that living biological aspect to it. It's almost fermented. Now, basically what I'm going to be using today is I had the other three units set up for those other three species, the embers, the tricolors, and the cappuccinos, but I didn't have an extra one set up thinking there was going to be another species. So I had to scramble a little bit. I'm thankful that some of the things, because when I got them ready before, I had some of the components that I left in a certain way, in a certain state, that are definitely going to help me today. So let's go ahead and get these guys set up. Let's show you guys how I'm going to do it quickly and how you can set up an isopod quickly at home, should you have to. All right, first component is you definitely have to have an appropriate size container. So I've gone and cleaned one of the other ones up. This is one of the ones that has ventilation on both sides. It's the same standard unit I use for almost all my isopods. Now, truth be told, we've learned so much about isopods in the past year and a half, 2 years that we've been doing it, that literally we've done a complete 180, 360, I don't know, 800-degree turn. Like, we've gone around in circles learning and learning and learning. And all the stuff we did before is a lot of it's absolutely backwards. The baking the leaves, the boiling, the baking, the doing all these different stuffs and sterilizing. We are far better off dealing with the natural products in their natural states, and then just dealing with those products to ensure that we don't add in the negative things like centipedes or spiders or things like that. So what I've gone and done is I've prepared a lot of my substrate mix. I generally have a fair amount of it ready to go at all times. It's got large components. I use a nice, good quality black earth compost or organic soil mix or something like that. Try to avoid anything with any sort of fertilizers or anything like that. Components like charcoal, which we've talked about before, components like pumice or perlite, they offer absolutely nothing other than drainage. That's the reason those components are often put in the place for, say, a potted plant mix. Charcoal actually does have some benefits for plants in regards to it acts like a sweetener and removes impurities. But when it comes to the isopod, these things are absolutely useless. And there's nothing more useless in a mix than coconut fiber or core, be it chunks or the old granulated, the small stuff that looks like peat moss but isn't. Don't use that in your isopods. That is absolutely horrible. So what I've gone and gotten, my mix is already somewhat ready to go. I just have to add a few components. So the main component mix that I use is a nice, good quality organic black soil. I use a product called sea soil. So it has all sorts of different types of minerals and stuff, but all in their natural state. I add calcium carbonate. That is my calcium source, and you guys have seen me use that, and I sprinkle it liberally within the substrate mix. I'll put some links up to some of the videos and stuff where we've talked about substrates in the past, and that may be going to give you a bit more of a thorough thing. Leaf litter is a really, really big component. Now, I don't freeze my leaf litter. I don't boil my leaf litter. I don't do any of those things, but because of where I live, my leaf litter is essentially dead. Leaves are dead, but the best way to harvest them is, like, I was just recently in Toronto, and it was like +6, +12, and it's everything, all the frost is coming out of the ground. There's leaves absolutely everywhere, sitting in puddles in the forest, and mosses and white rot wood and all those components. To me, if I were there, I would be harvesting like crazy. But here in Canada, where I am, it gets far colder, and we've got lots and lots of snow. We're probably frozen 2 feet underground right now. So I have to save my leaves and store them for the winter. Same with things like bark and stuff like that. Now, the components I have is, let's get some of my substrate mix, and let's get it into the tub, and then we'll take a peek at it. So we're always tinkering around with our substrate mixes. We're always trying to find the right thing. Now, I've got, I don't know, about 40 different species of isopods. They don't all require the exact same thing. Armadillidiums are primarily vegetable-based, meaning they're vegetarians. They love breaking down a lot of those organic forest products. But when it comes to things like Poecilothera or some of the armadillo types, those ones often require a fair bit more protein sources in their diets, and that can come from a myriad of sources. Again, we'll go and look at the substrates and the feeding options in other videos. But the Merulanella and the Cubaris types, and I'm sure there's, a lot of this science is going to get changed. We're going to have all sorts of new names eventually. But a lot of those ones that are coming from that florist floor type stuff, they're kind of in the middle. Now, the one thing that is factual to them is that they do need higher calcium sources. So in the case of the Merulanellas, I've been taking around, and you guys have seen the video where I've had the Merulanella for a long time, the tricolors, and I've been taking around with different things, vivariums and so forth. But the one thing I'm going to be trying differently, I've already done it with the other three, but I never even mentioned it to you guys, is because these things are all generally limestone-based bedrock or calciferous-based bedrock, is I'm going to be using a product that's basically a coral sand, a crushed coral sand, and basically it's a true calcium source. And basically what I'm just doing is I'm just going to be putting a thin layer on the bottom of the container. And that is a true, so it's going to mimic kind of like a bedrock situation without having to put the idea of putting giant rocks in the cage, because they just need a calcium source. This will be a lot more readily available than, say, putting a limestone rock or a coralline rock. It's all broken down a little bit for them. It's a little bit finer, but it still is a sand. So you can use kettlebells, you can use calcium powders, all those different options. This is just something I'm going to try that's a little bit different. Never done it before. So next, as I said, let's go get some of that substrate mix into here. So there you have it. There's our substrate mix. Lots of components, that nice, loamy compost stuff. Like if you put your hand in a forest and dug down and pulled up a handful of soil. And the components, as I say, are primarily that nice organic black earth or compost. An absolute ton of leaf litter, and I crush it all up and mix it all in. We still will top dress with leaf litter, and for that leaf litter, I generally soak it overnight so it makes it nice and it starts to break the tissue down, ready digestible. And then a lot of components of this white wrought wood. And the white wrought wood, I actually have a tub of it, 2 tubs. One's in the garage, and then I bring it in the house. And even the one in the garage where it's all cold is still very warm, like a compost pile. And white wrought wood just breaks down into absolutely nothing into the environment. And this is a good food source for the isopods, as well as things like the millipedes. It's absolutely essential for certain species. So by letting it kind of compost, it's generating a fair bit of warmth in the compost. That means it's still maintaining a lot of the biologicals, which is exactly what we want to do. Same kind of components of what happens with things like flake soil, is we want to maintain those biologicals so we can have that nice living system that'll support those animals. Now, the other things that we do need, I said I will be top dressing, but the other things that we do need is we need some pieces of some different types of shelters that'll provide different types of climates within. So I've got nice pieces of naturally harvested oak and different types of woods and stuff. And a lot of this is all started crumbly as well. And this provides structure as well as a food source. Some of them have different types of mosses and lichens and stuff growing on them. Those are all good components. The other factor of the thing that we definitely want to add is I've got a lot of living forest moss that I have, and I keep it stored. Some of it, I keep it stored in the garage, but when I do need it, I soak it generally overnight. And this is the component that I was talking about, that I'm kind of fortunate that when I set up the last ones, is I had a fair bit of it that was still kind of left in the bins and components, and so it's good that it's still here. I wring it out a little bit, and I've got that nice natural forest product that'll provide this a good food source, as well as a lot of the living biologicals, and as well as their humid area. It doesn't really matter where some of these components go. It's not like I'm trying to recreate, a beautiful vivarium or anything like that. It's just basically ensuring that all the components that the animals are going to be within this environment. So on top of that, the other thing that I do have, and this is literally all I have left, is I like getting some of the different branches and stuff from the forest that have things like lichens and mosses and growing on them. And these are often components of a thing that are integral for the success in some of these animals. But honestly, these 2 pieces is really all I have left. So that means sometime this week, I'm going to have to make a trip to the forest, harvest some of these dead branches that are all covered in these lichens. And then what I do is I bring them home. And the same thing as the mosses, I just soak them kind of overnight and make sure that's going to kill off any sort of pathogens or animals that we definitely do not want in these environments. Otherwise, it's kind of good to go. So basically now we're pretty much ready to add the isopods. I'm going to go get some leaf litter and top dress it all down. We're going to soak it overnight probably before I go and add it, because there's lots of leaf litter already within the structure of the unit itself. So let's go get the animals and get them settled. Now here's those incredible Merulanella species DIABLO. They are absolutely outstanding. Well, same sort of type of care as you would have for the other species of Merulanella. Now, the one thing that is we are learning through people like Jeremiah, Edwin Lopez, and other individuals that have really spent the time working with these really high-end species of isopods is we're starting to find out that how their care is different from others. Now, we've talked about adding all these natural components to their diet, making sure they've got these real good environments. They like it evenly moist kind of all the time, but the one component that these guys do definitely require is they also require heavy ventilation. Now, that's where sometimes the challenges come in taking care of some of these animals, because we come from a very vastly different habitat in our homes in North America with forced air heating and air conditioning than they would, say, in the jungles of Vietnam. So to be able to provide those type of conditions is sometimes a little bit more challenging. So some of these individuals, I'll call them the pioneers like Jeremiah and Edwin, is they've often incorporated different things such as components like misting systems or foggers, and these things have been very helpful to be able to make sure guarantee the success of these species. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video on this absolutely breathtaking isopod. We're going to let them just kind of settle in now and check back on them every week and see how they're doing. I think they are pretty incredible.